Warning: the five may contain discussions on topics such as death, suicide, rape, addiction, and abuse. Although these topics are approached in a therapeutic manner, they still may have triggering effects on some individuals. Viewer discretion is advised.
Human beings are crafted through experience. Each person, from the closest of friend to the most random of stranger, has a unique story crafted by the ultimate experience that we call life. Welcome to The Five. The same five questions, a completely different experience every time.
I met today's guest at Adult Dodgeball. She had a really cool vibe, so we became friends pretty quickly. So I'm actually interested in hearing her story because we've never really sat down and had like an adult conversation. We always have fun. So how about you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Becca. I don't know if that's, part of this, but I grew up in Knoxville. I was actually born in Annapolis, Maryland. My mom's from Baltimore, so I have a pretty strong connection to Maryland. I am currently in my second year as an attorney. So, and I do, property law, business law, and also just because I'm in my second year as an attorney, pretty much everything else. So lots of just random cases, a lot of small claims court, stuff like that. So yeah, that's me, I guess, in a nutshell right now.
That's awesome. We kind of get to go through with you through like when you had to take your bar exam and everything and all the nerves that you had during all that. So
Yeah, I got definitely used dodgeball as a stress release from a lot of that. So that's been so good to have.
I think it's been really good therapy for all of us, both exercise and mental.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know the drill. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You can answer them however you like. You ready to try this?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's start with what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?
Okay, so scariest. This one's kind of intense. So COVID obviously was a very scary time for a lot of people. And for me, I think that the scariest thing that's ever happened to me was getting COVID really, really bad that first time. So I got COVID for the first time. I guess it was it was December of 2020 because it was a little bit before the vaccines and stuff had come out. And so, and I was living in my parents' house. My parents are both for various reasons in the sort of medically, I guess we called it medically fragile category or what, or high risk or whatever it was. So it was just kind of scary. That time was just scary in general, just because, I was constantly worried about my parents and them getting sick and what would happen and all this stuff. So I got sick over Christmas. We had a bunch of family in town and stuff. And I started feeling sick, and a bunch of, my other family members had gotten sick, and they had tested negative for COVID. So I was like, okay, I'm fine. We're good. It's just a really bad flu, whatever. And then I tested positive for COVID, and it was just like this, like dun 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 kind of moment. And I was really sick. I felt like worse and worse and worse. Just throughout, the couple of days ramping up to this. And so I had to go on total lockdown, total isolation. And the other part of this is that my now husband, Jake, who we were dating at the time, was coming into town. So we were actually long distance throughout law school, and he was coming into town to spend some time with me over the holidays. And he was driving in, and, I was telling him I was sick, and he was like, is it COVID? And I thought it wasn't at the time. So all this, was going on. So I went on full lockdown. I was in my bedroom at my parents' house, and it luckily, I guess, has its own bathroom. I say I guess. Yeah, it's awesome that I have my own bathroom. But um so I lost my sense of taste and smell, which was really jarring. And I'm a very like physical, kinesthetic, like touchy-feely taste, like my experiences in the physical world. And so losing my taste and smell was like, oh my God, like what is happening? I was in full isolation. Um, Thankfully, I mean, I'm really glad that Jake was there because he was kind of the one who was bringing me stuff, taking care of me and all this stuff. But um my parents, I was so worried about my parents because I was like, if I get my parents sick, like I could be responsible for like the death of like this was so terrifying. And then add to that, just kind of being stuck in one room for that long. I think I was in isolation for 3 weeks because I had just been so sick for so long. Another thing that happened during that time was I actually started to have some like breathing troubles. And I had been using, because I have like an asthma inhaler, so I had been kind of using that. And didn't really know, I guess, the difference between the, shortness of breath that is like, go to the hospital, you're dying, and, just a normal, I guess, not chest tightness, but, you get a little wheezy sometimes, especially when you're sick. So I had done my like asthma inhaler, and then my chest started feeling tight, and I was like, I'm terrified. Long story short, I feel like what happened was I may have had a panic attack. But basically I called my doctor and I was like, my chest feels tight. I can't breathe very well. I don't really know what to do. And they were like, if you're saying that your chest feels tight, you need to go to the ER. So it was this whole, and I was terrified. I mean, I was like, I can't breathe. My heart rate was just insane. I mean, I think my heart rate was up at like 120. And uh, it was this whole kind of dramatic thing. My mom, God bless her, she came in to my bedroom and I was like, Mom, do not come in here. I have COVID. Like, I don't want you to get sick, please. And she was like, I just need to hug my baby because she's going to the hospital and I don't know if I'm going to see her again and all this stuff. So, I mean, it was pretty like just so intense and scary. And then just being in the emergency room, Jake had to drop me off, and could not come in with me. So that was like terrifying for him. And he's got, his own issues with hospitals. And so it was just like this person that I love I'm taking her to the hospital and I can't even go in and be there with her. So I was just like by myself and like, I don't think the hospital was empty, but we were all very widely separated for obvious reasons. And so yeah, I guess just that whole time of just being almost like completely sensory deprived for a solid 3 weeks. I mean, I know, it's weird for me to say, that I felt like I was in prison because it's not, I wasn't in prison. That's not the experience that I had, but it was like that same feeling of like complete social isolation, complete like sensory isolation, just everything. I can't smell, I can't taste. Eating food was like exhausting because you think about when you're eating, a huge part of that experience is the taste and the smell and that experience of it. And that is actually what almost kind of keeps you eating. But because I was so tired, like even chewing, like I was just like, I'm so exhausted. So I guess that whole experience was kind of, in my mind, kind of sticks out to me as the scariest thing that's ever happened, because there were just so many unknowns too at that time. and just being terrified of harming my parents in any way through really no fault of my own. But it was just like, you do what you can. And um, just, everything else is just kind of like nobody knows what's going on. So,
Yeah, that was the weird thing about COVID, was that you could either have the symptoms of like a minor cold, or you could be on a respirator. You just never knew
oh,
anything.
yeah.
And I was like you, my dad is like on that list where, if I brought COVID in, I thought I could kill my
Right.
father and then I could not live with
Oh,
myself
yeah.
ever again.
That was the thing that, that was wild about that was, I mean, a lot of my adult friends, because I mean, a lot of my adult friends were living on their own, obviously, would just not be able to see their parents. And so it was like, we just don't go over there. And I was just like there. And so I was just like, anything I do, I have to be so careful. So yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, you almost feel like a bomb. Like you're like a walking bomb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, scary times for everybody.
Glad we're out of that, man. Like, ah,
Yeah, when we look back, it's going to be so weird to tell people that didn't go through it, to explain it to people.
seriously.
Well, I think we can move on to the next one, which is, what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you?
Okay, so I was excited about when I was thinking through what I was going to say for this one. I want to say, truly, the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me is just the circumstances of meeting and dating my husband. So I don't know if I've ever told you guys or, anyone at Dodgeball this story. I'm sure that we've kind of gone into it. We kind of have this sort of like, this like elevator speech version of this story now, because we've told it so many times and people are like, oh, how did you guys meet? And it's not as simple as like, oh, we went to school together or whatever. And so we've really had to just like condense it. So I think I'm very excited to tell kind of the whole story about this. So I met my husband, Jake, and Jake. He's awesome. Love him. I met him in Cambridge, England. So at the time where we met, so we both were in law school at the same year when we met. Both of our law schools, he went to Ole Miss and I went to Tennessee College of Law. And both of our law schools participate in this study abroad program in Cambridge. And essentially what it is it's just, I think it's a 6 or 8 week program. I can't remember what it was. And you go and you take basically international law classes, and the professors get to participate and come up with their own classes that are essentially the normal stuff that they teach, but kind of putting an international spin on it. So the other piece to this is that my father is also a law professor at UT Law. So I was like teacher's kid to the extreme, but I was like 28-year-old adult. So it was actually my dad's it was his turn to go and teach a course on the program. So what we had kind of a setup where, and I have a sister with Down syndrome, and I was, living at my parents through school, and they needed somebody to kind of care for my sister so my dad and my mother got to go, so my mom could, travel and stuff with him and enjoy that time. So basically the deal was that my dad paid for me to take a summer class, kind of as, compensation, I guess, for taking care of my sister and just staying home with her and making sure she had everything she needed and prompting her to, do her hygiene routine and stuff like that, make her meals and everything. So I did that for most of the summer, but then toward the end of the summer, they flew me out to go just hang out in Cambridge for a week. So I had some friends who were on the program as well from UT Law. And I met up with one of them one night. my friend and now obviously our mutual friend SB just told me to come to this Italian restaurant, and I showed up, and it was me and SB and then our other friend, and then Jake was there. And we just sat down at a table, and another kind of side tangent to this is that I was actually dating somebody at the time that I met Jake. And it was kind of one of those situations where I shouldn't have been dating this person. It was just, you date those people just because you're like in your 20s and they're there and you're like, well, this seems fine, I guess. So I have been dating this other guy for like probably about 3 months at the time, and it was not going well, but it was also one of those, I was in that phase where I kind of felt like it wasn't going well, but I wasn't ready to admit that to myself because I at this time, like, I didn't want to be alone. And I kind of had this kind of thought that I was so sick of dating at that point. And I was like, if this is over, then this is it for me, because I can't deal with this anymore. I just had such a long string of bad dating experiences. So I was dating someone that was kind of, my sister once described how I was in that time as I almost like a leaky tire. Like I was just kind of slowly draining from this relationship. So I was away from that. And I sat down across from Jake, and that whole first conversation we had, I felt more seen in those moments, in that time, than I had felt in like the entire 3 months of being with this other person. And probably ever, honestly. I mean, we just, like, something clicked into place when I talked to him. It was absolutely wild. And I was so pissed because I was like, God damn, like, I met this person and we just clicked so well, that even so much so that, that my friend SB said to me later, is like, yeah, Kenya and I really enjoyed our dinner together. How about you and Jake? Because it was just like, we kind of, everything else just sort of fell away around us. I mean, it was one of those types of things. And then, the other funny thing about that is that we were hanging out, and my friend SB at one point goes, so how's your boyfriend? And I was like, damn it, like, why do you gotta say that right now? But anyway, so yeah, we met, and then I didn't see him for the rest of that trip. We had one other night that we went out clubbing or something, and I had kind of wished that he had gone. And he tells me now, he's like, if I had gone clubbing with you guys that night, I would have ruined it. I would have been awkward or done something weird, and you would just not be, it wouldn't have worked out. So I think that's kind of funny. We saw each other that one time, and on the trip, we friended each other on Facebook, and we messaged back and forth and stuff. I think about a month later, things kind of came to a head with the other guy I was dating, and I just kind of slid into Jake's DMs, and it was funny because our friend Esty did that first, and she messaged him and she said, hey Jake, Becca's single, go shoot your shot. And Jake is very just polite and like very just kind and nice, and was not gonna do that. Like, he was not gonna be that guy. But I was that guy. So I simply just said, I think I said something like, I really enjoyed meeting you, and I feel like we really hit it off. Next time, if you ever find yourself in Knoxville, let me know and we'll get dinner. Just kind of thinking, this is never going to happen. This guy lives in another state. I met him halfway across the world. Like, there's no way. There is no way that this is going to happen. And his next message to me was, well, what's the midpoint between me and you? So he was like, let's do this. Let's go. Let's figure this out. So I was like, well, we've got Birmingham, Alabama, and then we've got Nashville, because he lived in Oxford, Mississippi, and then obviously I lived in Knoxville. And so, he's like, let's do Nashville. What do you want to do? And August 29th, 2019. So we're coming up on like 4 years, I think, of our first date anniversary. But that whole situation even was weird, where this was crazy. So thinking about it, and even at the time, I was like, I am meeting a man that I met one time across the ocean in a new city. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? This is I'm either going to get Ted Bundy murdered, or this might be the best, most memorable time of my life, or, just the best thing. And it was incredible. I mean, we did like a brewery Saturday. And so we were both, broke law students at the time as well. And, we had this super awkward conversation about what we were going to do about like staying the night there, because he had to drive. So it was like it's kind of halfway. It's like 3-ish hours for me. And then I think it was like 4 or 5 for him. So it was like, we're doing a brewery day. We probably shouldn't like go to Nashville and then try to drive home. So we were like, okay, well, let's get a hotel. But then we were like, do we really want to get to, like, I can't afford to get my own hotel room. What about you, kind of thing. But we were like, we're not trying to be presumptuous or anything. And he was very like respectful. He's like, I'll sleep on the couch. It's fine. But we had this kind of danced around the conversation of I can't afford my own hotel room, and neither can he. So yeah, I mean, we got a hotel room together. But yeah, then I mean, we dated long distance in law school, 6 hours away. And we would drive 6 hours. And we would kind of take turns on, who would go to, I'd go to Oxford one month, and then the next month he'd come to Knoxville. Sometimes we'd squeeze 2 trips in a month. And so we kind of just worked it out, to that point. And then obviously, I mean, not to bring up COVID again, but, COVID hit, and we went from being long distance to quarantined together for a lot of that. And I'm surprised we didn't kill each other, because I mean, it was an adjustment for everyone. I mean, even people who lived in the same city were dating and going quarantine, but we actually went from like one extreme to the other. And I think we always kind of knew that we were, that this was it, like, for us. But I think that surviving COVID, and, as hard as a lot of parts of that were, I think really kind of solidified that. So yeah, and I mean, my guy he's just weird as hell, and I love it. Like, we are weird and silly. And so in a way, he is also the weirdest thing to ever happen to me, because I mean, our weirds just match perfectly, like they say. And yeah, so that's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me.
One, I love hearing about when one small thing, like you going to dinner, changes your life completely.
Yeah.
You never know. It's like that butterfly effect. You get the butterfly, and there it goes. Your life is completely in a different thing. It's so cool to think about that.
Well, and Jake's was like that as well, because I mean, I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but he was planning, they had done some sort of outing earlier that day where they walked along the river to this, beautiful tea room where all these famous writers did their writing and talking about things. And, which I'm kind of jealous that I didn't get to go on that little excursion, but that's neither here nor there. But I think his friend, my friend SB and the other friends, got an Uber and were, going to get something to eat. And he had the choice between walking back along the river and hopping in the Uber with them. And he picked, I'm going to hop in the Uber and get some food. So even on his side was like, if he hadn't done that, then who knows, so it's just crazy.
And two, Jake is awesome. He is really weird, which of course, I love weird. So I definitely want to get him on here sometime and everything like that, because he is just one of those characters everybody has to meet. But I want to say, like, you two are like, you can just tell how well you mesh together. Like, it's like you just, you see those couples where you like people are like kind of like jealous of how well you two get along, and you guys are kind of that couple.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's funny.
So that's really, that's really cool. And I had not heard that story. So I think it's just really neat how it was like this one small chance encounter thing on the other side of the world. Like, you're living in the same country, but you meet each other in a completely different country. And then it just has to all work out. And then COVID is like, let's put them together and see if it works.
Yeah, let's really test this. Yeah, it's just God. Well, and I feel like when I was younger, probably teens and even early 20s, I was like, I was obsessed with just romance. I was a bit of a serial monogamist, and anytime I was single, I feel like I would kind of just like try to set myself up for a little meet cute, and then obviously went through just dating, and got very frustrated and cynical very fast, and then ended up having like a literal meet cute be how I met my husband. So I think it's just wild and funny. So,
well, I guess we can move on to the next question, which is, what's the most memorable moment of your life so far?
Not to sound super cheesy, but I will have to say the most memorable moment of my life so far was my wedding day. Absolutely. I am one of those people who, so I have social anxiety. I'm realizing now that I'm more of an introvert than I previously would have liked to admit. And I get just to bring on an example, like our friend Megan, Megan, I know Megan, everyone knows Megan. Megan is so good at like, she brings her circles together, man. Like she loves it. She absolutely loves it, and is like very accommodating, and like, and it's just great. I get so anxious about people in different circles of my life meeting each other, because I'm so empathic, and I really do pick up on, people's vibes and emotions and things like that. And I feel like if I have this fear that, which now for obvious reasons, and, hence this is why this is the most memorable moment of my life. I don't have that as much anymore, but I mean, I can't handle the like combination of, different people's vibes and personalities. Like I hang out with this person when I'm feeling X way or whatever it is. And I keep my circle, I think nowadays, relatively small. So the amount of people, and we had invited like 200 to our wedding. I think it ended up being like 90 to 100 maybe, which for me was perfect. I loved it. But so the other thing about my wedding and being, the time leading up to my wedding, I'm also very uncomfortable with people celebrating me. I do not like, I'm like, I don't want to be the center of attention. Like, it makes me really uncomfortable. And so I was like very anxious about my wedding because I was going to be literally the front and center, the bride. And I was freaking out about that. I was like not okay. But it really was one of these days that everything just kind of came together so seamlessly, and I allowed myself to let other people celebrate me and kind of like open myself up to that. And I think a big part of that, my friend SB, who I mentioned earlier, basically kind of good-natured bullied me into having a bachelorette party because I was like, I don't need a bachelorette party, that's fine. And she put together the whole thing. She put balloons up in my house and stuff, and made it. We had like a Xenon Girl of the 21st Century theme, and so I had like space stuff on. It was a lot of fun. So I kind of was like open to the idea of people celebrating me. And then, I had obviously my family there, my friends in different circles, like my law school friends, old time friends, college friends, things like that. And then Jake's people were there, and everyone just like got along and really just showed up in how much they loved us, and us individually, and then us as a couple. And it was just like this wonderful, like, seamless day where I kind of got proven wrong for a lot of my fears. And yeah, I mean, it was just fantastic. It was just a good day.
Yeah, sometimes we have to beat our own mind. You just have to like say, okay, mind, stop being the enemy of me and just enjoy this. This is what it's meant for.
Right.
So I'm so glad that worked out, and everything was magical like you want it to be. You hear so many like horror stories where it doesn't. And a lot of times people set themselves up for that failure because of that mindset.
Oh yeah. Well, and I also, I mean, we kept it, we were super low budget with it. A bunch of my bouquets, I got like a 10-pack of Costco bouquets, and we did it in the church, my church's parish hall, which I think cost us like a $200 deposit that we got back. And I didn't, the things that I was like supposed to care about, I was kind of like flowers. I did not care about flowers. And my mom was like, you need to have flowers. And I was like, okay, well, those are fine. So I think I already had there wasn't anything that I really I was more concerned about like people having a good time celebrating us. And I think everyone did. And we had Dead End Barbecue, which shout out to Dead End Barbecue, and it's amazing. They catered our wedding, and that's something that people still talk about for is our wedding food. We had like the best barbecue in the world, so it was great.
And your guests are always going to remember
yeah.
the food more than anything.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, I hate to bring it down a level, but this is always the hard one. What's the saddest thing that's ever happened to you?
This one was hard, I think, for me to kind of come up with. Because I don't know, this sounds a little ominous, but I don't think that the saddest thing that's ever happened to me has happened yet. I haven't, I feel very fortunate. I haven't really experienced any like significant loss in my family. Like we've lost, for example, I mean, I have seen my mother go through the loss of 2 of her siblings. And I don't want to say that those are the saddest things that ever happened to me, because they didn't. I loved my aunt and my uncle, but that's not something that I really consider to have happened to me. Just besides the fact of, seeing my mom, and my mom my mom's family is all very, very tight, very close. It's this, close-knit Baltimore Catholic Irish family, which even the funerals are like a joyous experience because everyone's laughing and, silly and stuff like that. But those moments where, I can remember my mom walking in tears and she told me that her sister died. Um, those are things that kind of stand out to me as, certainly sad things that have happened to me. And, seeing my dad lose his father that, I didn't really know him as well because I was younger when this happened. But, seeing him that upset and really, I think, that being the first time I saw my dad cry, um, those things kind of stand out. But I guess the thing that I really think of, and I kind of rephrase it a little bit, like take a little creative liberty, but the saddest I've ever been, I think, I had, this year after I graduated from college where I I feel like I think that's kind of the most lost I've ever been. It was kind of a period of, self-exploration, and I worked retail, which was awful. Um, so much respect to people who, continue to work retail and kill it at it, quite frankly. But I was so miserable and, getting paid the same, finding out, for example, you're getting paid the same as like the teenager who's like not even really that great at like folding shirts or whatever. Like that part of it was tough. And then I was also dealing with, so for my entire life, I've had an anxiety disorder. And during college, I had like kind of figured all that out and kind of figured out how to manage my mental health and things like that, and had like a really great counselor, therapist in college. And I came home, and in the, normal, the real world, so to speak, you don't have this kind of like bubble where it's like, oh, you need a therapist? Like, here's our counselor on staff. There's not that same kind of thing. You just kind of have to figure it out on your own. And so I was, going through therapists, and nothing was really like, there were, therapists I had that it just didn't work out. I was also doing some kind of medication management stuff during that time. And I had a psychiatrist who was not good. There would be things that, like she would put me on something that I should not have been on. Like I got put on, bipolar medication, and it made me manic. And I just felt so like broken down, and, nothing really felt like it was working out or going well. And I was trying to deal with, I had just such severe social anxiety, but then like none of my core friends from back home were still back home. I went through like a really bad breakup during that time that, another one of those relationships you just never should have been in. But I just felt very down, and like nothing felt right. And I felt very lonely at that time. So that's kind of this thing that kind of stuck out to me the most as maybe the saddest I've ever been. I guess that kind of like that year happened to me, more or less. So yeah.
That's a very valid answer, because it is all how it appears to you and everything. And being in a bad mental state that you feel like you can't get out of. Plus, you just kind of had like an ending point of a certain point of your life. You have the college years where you've got the routine and everything, and now you've got this future that you're not sure about, and you're going into it in a bad mental state. That's scary.
Oh yeah.
Scary, sad, just the unknown of it. And I'm glad you bring that up because there's a lot of people out there, that we don't talk about it as much as we should.
Right. Absolutely.
It's normal. It's a normal thing. And also, I like what you said where, like when you're in college and everything, you have somebody to talk to, there's somebody on staff that's made for that.
Right.
But once you're out in the real world is kind of sucks, It's like, oh, you have problems. You either don't talk about it or you need to find you a therapist. You need to do all of this stuff on your own. And you're not in a great mental state to be doing all this stuff.
Here's something that I would say, and I'm a huge advocate for, talking about mental health and being very open about it. And I think I have the luxury of I feel like I've always been able to be more or less open about it. I think that one thing that is really hard for people and was really, really hard for me was there can be a therapist out there that's not right for you. And that might be the first therapist that you go to. And I'm very grateful. I mean, I have a therapist now. God, I love her. I don't know what I'm going to do if we ever have to, sever our therapeutic relationship or whatever. If she, moves on or does something else. But it took me I went through quite a few therapists, and there are ones where I have a tendency to with my own mental health. I have a tendency to I'm really good at playing fine, and I convinced several therapists that I was fine. And then I was like, why is therapy not working? And, and my sister would call me out on it, and she'd be like, you're not doing. But I mean, the other thing about that is that you got to have a therapist who knows about those sorts of things and can, my therapist actually is scary good. And it pisses me off sometimes because I will be breezing on through something that I really don't want to talk about. And she's like, hold on, slow down. Let's feel those feelings. And I'm like, but it ends up being so good in the end. So, everyone should be in therapy. That's my.
Everyone should be in therapy. And two, I like what you said, you can have therapists that don't work. And a lot of people, I'm really bad about if I get in with a bad doctor or a bad something like that, then I'm just I don't want to hurt their feelings because they suck and they're not helping me.
Oh, yeah. You just keep going.
But I'm also not helping myself.
Right. Well, that was the thing with the psychiatrist that I had is that I was this is bad. I'm not being prescribed the right medications, but I was I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude. And maybe and it's also really scary to try to find a new psychiatrist because you have to go through that whole process again. And it's exhausting to have to try to find somebody that's good. So I think it can be very discouraging.
If you have a doctor or a therapist and everything, and you're trying to talk to them and they're kind of either dismissing you or they're not doing the right thing, you need to speak up. And, if you speak up and they kind of get angry, because especially doctors, they're like, oh, did you Google that? Or did you do this? And it's hey, nobody knows me better than me. And you're not going to spend the same amount of time looking up things that I am.
I get real fired up about, this one conversation I had with this psychiatrist, I there was something happening with the medication that I was taking where I was it's giving me, I can't even remember what the symptom was, but it was I think it was it was giving me panic attacks or it was making me manic or something like that. Or I was just not sleeping. And she was like, that's not a symptom that people report. And I was like, I am reporting it. I am experiencing this right now. What? It doesn't matter that people aren't it's not typical. But yeah, no, I get really I really get fired up about that kind of stuff.
Well, I guess we can move on to the final question. And you've done really good.
Yay.
Based on your life experience so far, what's the best advice you can give the people out there listening?
I almost wanted to make it that, the find a good therapist. And if it's not a good therapist, speak up. But I have one that's kind of a little bit more relevant to my life now. I think in finding this really good therapist that I have, I've discovered, that perhaps I'm a little bit more of an introvert than I ever would have wanted to admit. And I think a lot of it is I think I kind of internalized a lot of that societal, introverts are bad and you're supposed to be social all the time and be a social butterfly and all this stuff. And it's just not. Like I love talking to people and getting to know people. But I also have a battery and that battery drains. And so I feel like, that being said, and I mean, this is kind of along the lines of, the therapist or the psychiatrist or just anything in life. I feel like I did a lot of things earlier in life because I thought I should be doing them. And I'm in this kind of neat period of my life where, I mean, I don't have a lot of like time or energy just because, I mean, working as an attorney it can be so intense and so exhausting. And I've had to really get like a lot more intentional about how I'm spending my time. And there's been a lot of like, I've had some like internal struggle with how to deal with that. What do I want to do? What do I want to be spending my time doing? And then feeling like, oh, I'm going to disappoint this person or this isn't going to happen or whatever it is. But I think that going through that, it's like, I really do need to figure out what, the best way for me to thrive. And so I guess that's kind of my advice would be to really just figure out and be honest with yourself about what it is that you need to like thrive and live your best life, and then to kind of lean into that. You can kind of, sometimes I allow, like friends will pressure me to like go out, and I'm like, you know what, like sometimes it's okay to lean into those kind of pressures because that sometimes you have your own personal blind spots and you don't maybe necessarily know that you need to have that time with people or whatever it is. But also don't like beat yourself up about taking time for yourself, whatever that means. If you need to go sit in a dark room all day, that's awesome. If that restores you and regenerates you, and then that gives you the energy to, go and be with other people or do your job better or just be a healthier person, like do that without feeling the shame of, this is not what I should be doing, I guess.
My big thing is like, I have to let go of feeling guilty when I do things for myself.
Absolutely.
You feel selfish, but it's not selfish. It's self-preserving.
You can't be a good, friend, partner, employee, whatever, without first being good with yourself and being a healthy person. You're not going to be as effective as, being there for your friends or being there for your partner if you're not healthy, like mentally and physically, spiritually for yourself.
Yeah, our friend Chad has a good example, and he says, when a plane starts going down, they tell you, even though you love your children, you have to put your gas mask on yourself first.
Absolutely.
Because then you can't take care of the child if you're trying to get them situated and you pass out. So you kind of have to take care of yourself first, and then you have all this energy to spend to the things that you're supposed to be doing or you feel like you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have to do those things that you feel like you have to be doing. It's like, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? It's Friday night and I can sit at home and have a pizza and be happy. And tomorrow I can go do something fun with everybody else. But I need this night.
The rest time.
I need some me time.
Yeah.
I'm always go, go, go. But I have found, I always used to think I have an unlimited battery. And no, I just have a really big battery. But then once it gets to the end, I do have to recharge it.
Yeah, I see. I think I've always honestly had a pretty small battery, but I think I've pushed myself past that limit like way too many times, and it's just ugly. It's not good for anyone. I'm mean as hell when I'm, not in a good, space with how much rest I've gotten and how much, like quiet time I've had and stuff.
Well, this was really cool.
Yeah.
We've never sat down and had just an adult conversation. We're always in fun mode when we're around each other. So it's kind of cool to kind of get to see this side of you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that can relate to a lot of things you talked about today, and that's what we're here for.
All righty. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I want to thank you all for listening today. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Also, check out the video podcast at Handlebar ASMR on YouTube for extras.